Hello, everybody. Welcome to the SaaSberry AI Podcast. Today we'll be talking about the AI work shift, who's using it, what works, and what's next. We're joined by guest Steve Mossop, ex-Vice President of Western Canada Ledger, and a leader in consumer insights and public affairs research. So we'll let you introduce yourself, Steve. Thanks for being here.
Sounds good. Thanks for the intro. Yes, I've been in the market research industry for a long time, for about 38 years. And so what I've done over this time is amassed just a repertoire of public opinion polls. We do about 2 or 3 a day. And over my lifetime, I've probably done close to about 1,200 press releases covering every topic under the sun, from election results to how consumers are feeling, economic confidence. And we have been tracking the last 3 years opinions towards AI. So really the topic of this podcast can delve into some of those opinions and usage statistics to give your listeners a sense of what's happening in the marketplace, what's adoption look like, what are the concerns, and where we're going next.
Nice.
So I'll introduce myself. I'm Steve Boey. I'm the CTO of SaaSberry. We built custom agentic solutions for enterprises. Like Steve was saying, it's a fast changing area, and it's even for enterprise and businesses. But it's really good to kind of have someone like Steve here today, because he has a baseline to talk about. He's seen the progress of everything that's happened. And one thing that I should mention too, Steve, is that you were basically in the front line, because you guys did implementation of a huge project in AI a couple of years ago, I believe. And since then, it's been fully hit on with Ledger and AI. So congratulations to that. I'm really looking forward to hearing about it. So in our first segment, again, what we're talking about is the AI work shift. Who's using it, what works, and what's next, right? So let's talk about how Canadians are responding to AI. And that's perfect thing for you to talk about, because you really have been talking to a lot of people, right? So yeah, tell us.
Yeah, our public opinion polls are the same polls that we use to predict election results. So presumably, if we can call elections properly, we can get a good sense of how people are using AI. And we've tracked this, 5 times since February 2023. Back in the early days, about a quarter of Canadians had tried it. Right now, we're at a number that's, I'll break this down a couple of different ways. 57% of Canadians have ever tried AI in any shape or form. That's generative AI. It's a whole bunch of different forms of AI. And of that group, there's really only about half of those who use it on a regular basis. So in terms of overall adoption, I think people, especially like you and I, Steve, in the space, we always assume that there's more than what there is.
Yes.
We assume that everybody lives the lives that we lead, and it's just not the case. We got 57% of Canadians have tried it. About 25% use it on a regular basis. And of that, there's only about 10 to 12% who use a paid version of it. So as a serious user, if you're not using a paid version of it, you're really not untapping all the potential. So in the general scheme of adoption, it's a fairly small number. And let me turn to business too. The statistics around business are a little bit more difficult to capture. There's lots of different reports. There's KPMG reports, there's Stats Canada. The latest I can scour even this morning is that the best estimates out there is that about 30% of large enterprises in Canada are using AI to some extent, and only about 10 to 15 of the small medium enterprises. So again, it's a fraction, and it's not as pervasive as people like you and I who live and breathe it every day think. So we're really kind of behind. And when you look at the stats in the USA, they're about 20 points ahead of us. So Canadians are a little bit behind. So that's the overall framework of how many Canadians at least are using AI.
Do you think the lack of adoption in general, especially in the workplace, especially in Canada, is that for lack of understanding of how the tools can be relevant to them? Or do you think that they are using it, but they're afraid to expose it to their managers, that they are using it because there's a negative perception of either the reliability, or that they feel like it undermines their purpose, right?
Yeah, several reasons. I think in the overall scheme of adoption, you've seen lots of charts that show that AI adoption is faster than any other technology, whether it's mobile devices or Apple products or just anything along the scheme of technology adoption. It still rates faster than most. You look at the number of people who started using ChatGPT in the first 4 months relative to any other platform. It's through the roof. In that sense, give Canadians a bit of credit. They are adopting, but the numbers are low. So you asked the question why. A couple things. Corporately, first and foremost is corporations themselves and leaders themselves. The fear of privacy, security, legalities, all of that stuff has been a major barrier. And that's why corporations are adopting it slowly. On a consumer level, it's really, I think it's just the natural barriers to technology adoption. It's fear, it's a little bit of lack of know how. Then, within the group itself, so when you look at that 57%, so here's some interesting stats that we found in our own company. We found that 10% of users are through the roof. The number of chat sessions that they open on an annual basis is about 6,000. So that's roughly about 45 a day, 10%.
Yes.
And then we got 20% who are almost nothing, like one or two a day on average. Another 15% slightly beyond that. So the true power users, just in our own microcosm of 350 employees, is individual segments are really very different. The adoption levels are very, very different. Somebody like you or I, when you're on your phone every minute of every day working with it, it's so pervasive in your world, but we're a fraction of that 57%. So just puts the numbers in context, and the overall conclusion I come to is that just for all of us decision makers alike is be careful. Don't assume that organizations and people are adopting anywhere near the level that you actually think it is. It's so much smaller. We're just at the cusp of the potential of this tool in the years to come.
Right. And one thing I've noticed is that there was a study released this week from OpenAI and Anthropic, and it shows that 50% up to 50% of the usage are in the category of questions. People doing inquiries, doing asking, and I think that's a big uptake on that. And I think that's in a general high level use case, even in businesses, that's what they're using it for, to kind of start asking it, just like what people used to do when they do a Googling. They would use
Absolutely.
ChatGPT or Gemini or Perplexity. They start asking questions on it. And so does that indicate changing view of reliability and I guess the integrity of the answers they're getting?
Well, let's address the first part, which is what are the actual numbers of what people are using. So again, let's break it down. Of the 57% who have ever tried, when you look at the list, it's chatbots, assistants, it's ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and things like that, and that's about 70% of that 57. And then you get into search engine AI, so just question Q&A, it's about 50% of that 57. Then you get into the more smarter tools about writing and productivity tools like Grammarly and Jasper and Copy AI and things like that. That's only 25% of the 57%. Image generation's only 20% of the 57. So the numbers again get really minuscule. So usage overall in those more advanced tools is a fraction of a fraction. And then get into the trust issue. So here's an interesting thing. I find it fascinating that when you ask people that have used AI how they rate it, the numbers aren't great. You've got only about 23% who give it an excellent. Yeah, how would you rate your overall experience with AI tools? 23% say excellent, half say good, and then you've got this group of let me get the number, 25% who say it's terrible, it's not good, it's fair, or it's poor. So the ratings overall of the users is actually not great for an early stage adoptive tool. It's I'd give it like a B or a C plus overall. And then you get into a trust factor, and that's where things really blow up. One of the most fascinating stats that we covered is how do you rate overall opinion of AI? Do you think AI is good for society, bad for society, or I just don't know enough about it? And the numbers that we've been tracking, only 34% say it's good for society. And in fact, the numbers who say it's bad for society have been creeping up. As usage increases, the actual numbers of trust, the trustworthiness of AI as a tool, are really low, like 25% in February 2023, saying it's bad for society. Then it went to 32 to 35 to 36. Like every wave that we touch on, you would think as usage adoption is going up that the numbers would get better, more positive experience. But the opposite's true. It's like fear, a little bit of dissatisfaction with the output. And I'll pause there, Steve, and see what you think of that, because I find those numbers just
Yeah.
jaw dropper.
I think those numbers are accurate, but it has to do with a couple of things. ChatGPT is a general tool, right? And I think that people who, if you talk to people who are more, I guess, power users, I think that figure might change just because they are better at using the tool the right way. And I think that applies in general. Like if you use a Cooper Mini to help your mother-in-law move, I think it'll be a painful experience, right? So when it comes to this, I think that, for example, the tools we built for enterprises are very optimized for specific narrow use cases, and they are very very effective because of that. And I think people who like me, being an engineer, for the coding use case is phenomenal.
Hmm. Hmm.
So it really comes right down to narrowing, and because there are numbers within numbers, and that's where the kind of tricky part is, right? So
Yeah, and our numbers back that up. So the things that you're talking about, the chatbots, the assistants, the providing people help when they're going to websites, those are rated highly and they're rated trustworthy. So they trust, completing tasks and for answering clinical health questions or advice or money management advice. All those are high in the trust category. Then you get into where do people not trust it? They don't trust it for legal advice. They don't trust it for mental health support and
yes.
counseling,
Hmm.
despite this surgeons of usage. They
Yes.
don't trust it for teaching your children and replacing teachers. And
Hmm.
there's this general kind of mistrust that they're worried that people are becoming too dependent.
Hmm.
They're worried that it's making them lazy. You remember back in the days of maps where people driving into swamps. Well, the map told me to drive into this area. I trust it. Well, a
Yeah.
similar thing we've got here where people are
Yeah.
fearful that it's going to make us collectively ignorant or stupid
Yeah.
as a society. So there's fear of that. And then they're at the top of the list of fear is the threat to human jobs. That's off the chart. Like 78% of Canadians
Yeah.
say that they're worried about that.
Yeah.
Susceptibility to fraud, 75%. So there's areas of
Yeah.
this danger, concern about AI chatbots on my child's games,
Yeah.
70%. Chatbots should be prohibited those
Hmm.
areas. So there's fear. There's a lot of fear-based things that are happening in this space that we have to be concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, why don't we kind of do a slight pivot and let's talk about kind of a case study type scenario. How do we effectively leverage AI in organizations? And this is where I really want you to talk about your experience rolling out large AI projects with Leger, right? So can you fill us in on that?
Sure. Yeah, I'll start with just kind of a very short history of what we've done. 350 employees were introduced to it around July of 2023. We had a group of power users that were introduced to Enterprise ChatGPT 4, and in November we rolled it out to all 300 employees. And in January of 2024, we did specialized expert coaches, company-wide training, creation of customized shareable chats. I think we're at 250 or 260. We're very micro level, task oriented. Here's a spot where you can do questionnaire design in our business. Here's a spot where you can look at our HR policies. Very micro level, customized shareable chats. And then now we're in the business of client facing tools, creating client facing tools. So the implementation right from the beginning has been really strong. Very I guess overall rollout that involved everybody. And then I'll give you kind of a sense of what has worked and what hasn't worked. And I'm just going to pull it up. One of them, number one, is CEO championing. So right from the very beginning, our CEO, I'll never forget the January 2nd or 3rd of the rollout. We had our big executive meeting after the new year, and he says, "Have you heard of ChatGPT? Oh my God, you've got to embrace this." And there was about 3 out of 18 people who put up their hand. And he said, "From this day forward, it'll be a central part of our company." So we're lucky in our business that we had a senior level champion. And that's
Yes.
often what's missing in an organization is a
Yeah.
senior level commitment and champion.
Yeah.
And then from there, organizations that don't have that, you have to figure out a way around that. You've got to have a champion somewhere, and maybe it's at a 2 or 3 levels down, but you need a champion.
Yeah.
And then from there, you really need insistence of AI integration in every initiative. So, the weekly meetings that we have, the deeper monthly or quarterly meetings, every single one of those top tier pillars of strategic importance to the company, there's insistence that how have you integrated AI into every initiative?
Yes.
And it's pounded home culturally. So there's sort of pillar number two, if you will. And then the other part is, of course, widespread use and acceptance. So just encouragement, a dedicated team of champions to support that. But even with that, Steve, we have this dichotomy of people. You've got just natural human tendency, those laggards versus the early adopters. You've got most of the activity, 80% of the activity is the 80-20 rule, are driven by 20% of the users. So you've got the opposite, 80% of the company is not really driving anything useful. So I'll pause there and just see what you think. But those are, CEO commitment, insistence of integration, widespread usage and encouragement. Those are kind of the three starting pillars.
So in our experience too, that's actually very, very similar in that when that leadership adopts and drives that mandate, what you effectively then echoes through the whole organization is that then there's budget behind this. And without that budget, it's just lip service. Right. And again, you talk about adoption and adoption is really key. And in any new technology, you need your evangelists who kind of show the way, right? A lot of tools you just don't know really how to use it, and on the surface, sure, you see people asking questions, and then maybe it becomes a situation where someone uses it for once, twice a week, right? But that's not the point, like how does somebody use this as an effective productivity tool for their use case in their specific role in their daily tasks? So adoption and then having that empathy to work with them to help them understand how to. Without that proper how to, without those steps, without the coaching, without that mentorship, that gap will always be there, where the usage is among a small group who do a lot. And I think this is one of those democratizing tools that the whole organization will be transformed based on how they use it.
Exactly. That's such a key integral point, is that humanization and training of the tool, because people forget that we are human, that employees are human, and not everybody is as excited about this. You read this stat or heard the stats that I'm talking about, the fear, the concerns that people have around privacy and losing jobs. Like, there's a lot of inherent fear in rolling it out. So you have to have the dedicated team of champions, experts, support, case studies, encouragement, almost shadowing behavior that happens. And you talked about, you quickly glossed over it, but there's one other sort of, I would say, my fifth pillar, which is specific R&D initiatives funded within the
Yes.
company.
Yes.
So, you know, and in our group, and I've heard this through other talks in this area, do the easy ones first. Pick the key
Yeah.
wins, but and don't pick 15 initiatives or 10, pick three and
Yeah.
say, we're going to do three initiatives within our company. We're going to use AI to tackle these three issues. Funding can make the form of, I guess, not just encouragement, but permission for employees to work on it and not have billable time if you're in professional services. Or it could be, creating time in the workday, but there has to be a mechanism to fund that. And then
Yeah.
there often has to be actual money involved. There's lots of federal programs, federal dollar programs that you can tap into, shred credits and things like that, where you can actually get money and apply it to an area. So that could mean hiring an employee, it could mean technology, it could mean a number of things. But you have to have money, and if you don't have the money behind those very specific R&D initiatives, it's hard to kind of push the big ones forward. So that's
Absolutely.
another big pillar, I would say, is those specific R&D initiatives
Yeah.
within the company.
So actually, that's speaking of jobs, that's actually a perfect segue because I find that AI, the current iteration of AI with your Gen AI, the demographic that's greatly impacted really is the 20 to 30 cohort, right? Especially those are that coming out of school right now. Those are their kind of getting into their first jobs the first time. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about students, new grads, how they are almost disproportionately impacted, and what can we do about it. So, Steve, do you Again, you're on
Yeah,
the
I
front
do.
lines, and you guys have a lot of interns and people who are, especially for a research organization, you guys have a lot of people in that cohort, right?
We do. I'll give you a small story on that. So we had an employee who spent about 300 hours in her first year, 350 hours. All she was doing is populating charts for a large tracking program that we did in the travel industry that had multiple regions. So you can imagine the tediousness of, okay, you've got 12 different regions, you got a 80-page PowerPoint, and every quarter you're updating numbers. Massive amount of checking and just the boring part. We automated that through AI, and that went away. There 350 hours went down to about 20 or 30 of spot checking. And that's just again a microcosm for the greater trend in not just our world, but in your client's world as well, where you're having this massive transformation, and there is a fear that youth can be displaced from that. But our experience is actually the opposite, where the 20 to 30-year-olds are working on different stuff. They're working on stuff that is intellectually more stimulating. They're working on client stuff. They're working on strategic stuff that they wouldn't be exposed to without the advancements of AI. That fear, and we are saving hours. So if you add that up collectively in the company to take those 350 hours times 50 projects, yeah, theoretically we're saving, 8 or 10 full-time positions because they don't have to do that anymore.
Yes.
But if you go back to the day of the introduction of email, there was a big fear that, well, what are we going to do with all the people that are typing out letters and sending them to clients? Like, oh my God, we're going to lose jobs. And there's this always been this perpetual fear in organizations of transformative technological change is a job killer. And it's just not true. It's not true. So I would really vehemently disagree with actual job losses in the space because of it. What it does is open up the door for new areas, or you can do more with less and grow your markets. We have not seen in our world, out of the 350 employees, job losses as a result of AI. Jobs are different, but they're not losses.
I'll give you an anecdotal evidence with, specifically with Chace. Chace hits up a lot of our marketing initiatives, and he's really embraced a lot of tooling around video generation, voice generation, and image generation, and he's done a very, very good job at producing a lot of content based on that. And, actually, I'll pass it on to Chace. Chace, what has your experience been? What you've done, I can honestly say, would have been a multi-person job in the last year. So what have your experience been?
Well, I'm able to just like edit voices. Like I'm able to make videos that would be like a big production, like you said. Like it would take like editors, it would take like multiple shots during the day. I could make a video in like 10 minutes now that would have taken a whole week to film beforehand. But one thing I've noticed though is I use a lot of different tools that a lot of my friends don't really realize are even available. I find myself a lot of the time, my friends, like just yesterday, my friend was asking me how I made a video, but he didn't even know it was AI. He was just wondering how I did it or where I shot it. But the only thing about making videos right now still is it's so new and people seem to have like a hatred for a lot of like content creation with AI. So like a lot of the time when I post AI videos, if it looks like AI too much, people will like attack it almost. They call it AI slop. So that's a downside to it.
Chase, that there is that sentiment for sure that there, you saw it in some of the things I talked about, is this feeling and attitude and this counter point of view.
Yeah.
But your case, so what you've done there, we have about 50 or 60 people in your category. So they're fairly new, like first 1 or 2 years. And they are the early adopters. They're finding the stuff that us old guys just don't have the curiosity or know how to find. And so what we've done is we've taken that a step further, and our CEO is actually meeting with that group next week in a series of almost internal focus groups and tapping into the brain power of those, 20 somethings who do the things that you do. And from there, our CEO is hoping to transform, the senior leadership by taking those case studies of youth and really tapping into their brain power, because you are in a different category. It's just you're able to adopt and to see things differently than what folks that are conditioned in Steve and I's world about that.
Yeah.
So tapping into youth, I'd say, is super important to learn.
Yeah. And Chace, I mean, with Chace, he this is his education, right? He went to school for arts and videography, and so the thing is that he had those fundamental ideas on what is good, what is bad, how he wants things produced. AI was the enabler. It gave him the ability to take it to the next level, make it professional with just him.
Hmm.
And I think that that's what people who there are slop AI slop out there. When it comes to written work, to AI books, to videos, but those that are good are the ones that will eventually kind of rise above, where the people who have that vision to be able to produce well can create content that is just very, very, very good, right? That
Yeah.
will, and again, it's not about kind of trying to fool people and trying not to, it's not about taking shortcuts, but it's about using a tool to its maximum ability to make yourself much brighter. It's like a multiplier, essentially, right?
And James, you're doing things that you weren't doing when you first started at
Yeah.
SaaSberry, right? Your
Yeah.
job's changed completely, and now you're focused on areas. So it's not my message to people who do the fear mongering of job losses. No, jobs will change, and you have to be nimble and be ready to change and adopt yourself because somebody else will do it if you don't do it. So there is a bit of like, hey, if you don't get on the bandwagon of AI and train yourself and be proactive and be one of those move into that early adopter or high user category, yes, you're going to lose out for sure. But
Hmm.
the opportunities that have come with it outweigh the downside by a long
Yeah.
shot.
I agree. I've also had a lot of people recently say things like you've gotten a lot better at making AI content or just using AI. But then I was thinking the other night and I was thinking like a year ago today I wouldn't have been able to even create this stuff because of every month there's like new upgrades, new updates. But yeah, every single day the AI gets better and I'm always on it right away, so it's I'm
I
pretty lucky.
remember even a few months ago, one of the weakness, Achilles heel of AI, especially AI video, is that its inability to understand physics. You could have a person running, and then you would have somebody running in the background upside down or up a wall.
Yeah.
It's funny.
In the earlier days, I would say, yeah, that was pretty predominant, but it is getting better every day, and it's an exponential curve of improvement. One of the last pillars, and I'll just finish kind of the story at Leger to solidify our successes in the area, is internal sharing of the custom chat GPTs and the outputs. So it's not just training, but it's sharing success stories. And what that does is inspire people to think of what it can do in their particular department. So
Yeah.
sharing of success stories is super important. And the last pillar is recognition and celebration. So we have this award called Rockstar of the Month, and there's 5 categories. One of them is AI. One of
Yep.
them is collaboration, and there's a bunch of other stuff. But and the Rockstar of the Month gets a day off, a free day off at its certification. Yeah, it's kind of cool. And then the person who's in the collaboration part of AI, they get to choose any conference that they want to attend in Canada. And
Really?
so it's a big prize. It's like, oh, if you get on that list, you get this reward. If you get airfare paid and a 2-day conference or whatever topic, as long as it's relevant to our business. So recognition and celebration and successes creates that culture of, yeah, if you have CEO commitment, you have integration in every initiative, you have widespread usage, you have the champions, you got the R&D, you've got the sharing, and then the last one, if you can solidify that and wrap it up with rewards and championing and recognition, that's kind of the magic formula. So that's just our story, and I hope that's helpful for your listeners, that you can take those and apply to any business, any industry, any sector. The formula works.
One thing I really applaud you guys for is that again, you guys aren't just paying lip service about this. You guys are living it. You guys are putting it into action, and you guys are actioning and rewarding to drive everything forward. That is something that you need to be congratulated on.
And
Oh
the other
yeah.
thing too, we didn't realize this. Like people don't look to market research companies as a source of, wow and innovation and something that we can learn from. But we started after when we're doing these sessions, we're talking to clients, we're doing our polling, and we're meeting with CEOs. We found that a lot of them are hiring us to do the AI part because they can't. They're not allowed to, or they
Mm.
can't touch it. And a recent example of, we're doing this market entry for a major technology provider in the B2B space in multiple countries. And one of the things that we produces what they call pestle reports: political, economic, legal, and I can't remember all the acronyms, but in each country, there's a ton of work to be done to see if your product or service is ready to be entered into that market. And AI, each of those countries, it would have taken, 150 hours to do one country to do it right. And we got it down to about 8 or 10 hours with AI. And it
Wow.
was just an example. And then we start sharing this with the companies that are buying our service, and they're saying, well, we can't do that, or we don't know how to do that. And then we started on this path, even doing this podcast of like, wow, we actually are way ahead of the curve. And
Yes.
so it's just a bit of a stumbling into success there where so many companies have these big barriers. And Steve, you and I connected and talked about the big conference that happened in Edmonton that I
Yeah.
spoke at. And the big theme that I saw that was shocking coming out was all of the big companies' presentations on due diligence and privacy and legal concerns and how they're addressing it. At the very early stage, they hadn't even really rolled out AI. They're all wrapped up in all those
Yes.
issues, and it was a
Yeah.
stumbling block. To loop back around to your overall framework, you asked me to comment on what's the difference between large versus medium and small. And the medium and small companies like ours, we can do that. We don't have a 10-person legal department waving their finger at us and doing these barriers. And the other interesting anecdote is the companies that have those barriers in place, what employees are doing is off the side of their desk on their phone AI. So they're fooling themselves if they don't think that there's security risks by doing it in a half-hearted way.
Absolutely.
Because the people on their phones are not using the enterprise version of the ChatGPT 5. They're using the free version of DeepSeek or whatever else they can find, and they're doing their stuff
Yes.
without their company's knowledge because it makes their jobs faster. If there's concern about security breaches, you have to be aware of that. So it's foolish to think that you can avoid the adoption of AI by putting those rules in place because people will just break them.
And that's so true. So two key things there, and that I've noticed, and I totally agree because what we're seeing with companies that are successful with it is get off the ledge. You got to get going, but if you want to get going in a way that addresses some of these concerns, are create a standard operating procedure regarding it. But don't it's it's going to iterate, right? It's not you're not gonna get it right the first time, but you got to get going to have some kind of framework for the adoption to happen. And the second thing is it's going to happen.
Yeah,
You,
it's
you
going to
know,
happen regardless.
it's this is a freight train that's coming right through. It will touch every single aspect of your organization. So get ahead of it, or provide the ability and enable your company, enable your employees. So
Yeah.
that's really really good point, Steve.
And even I'm not saying have a free for all, and you have to be concerned about customer lists and customer privacy, all that. Yes, you do. But use AI where that's not an issue. So just on, the one easy rollout for any company that's new to this is do it sort of on the executive assistant level. There's so
Yes.
many things that AI can do that can make your day-to-day job easy without tapping into or worrying about privacy or customer databases or, your internal proprietary knowledge. But just utilize AI for your own personal. How do you make your life easier, faster, better in that executive assistant kind of role? And
Yeah.
it's ridiculously easy the time that you can save if you just do get the champions to showcase what they do day to day and fixing their ease of life.
One last thing that I should mention is, especially with AI changing as quickly as it is, a lot of the innovations um, appear in the coding space first, right? So one thing that's happened with GPT-5 that's been very very different is that when it produces code, it's thinking about how it's thinking, and that is a massive leap when it comes to inference, and when it comes to reasoning, when it comes to understanding and how complex it does what it does to accomplish a task. If it runs into an issue, it looks through the way it was planning, the way it was thinking through the solution it gets to come up with alternate solutions. And that is very profound. And I think that that aspect will cascade through the rest of the different tooling and use case. But I do think that that parabolic rise in AI adoption and use will only continue. And I think that we are still early in this journey. And it's very exciting from my point of view. And I see that for people who have adopted it early, like you guys have, both have seen that, have reaped the benefits of that.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right. It is exciting times because it's the ability of AI to provide its own direction is quite crazy. And what the I'll say is really successful at Leger is the people that are using prompts of the prompts. So they're actually asking ChatGPT to create the scenario of what kind of prompt it should ask itself in order to get the output that it wants.
Yes.
When you see how people are doing that, it's like, wow, this is pretty cool. And the other thing that it does, and I don't know if you take advantage of this, is just in ChatGPT 5, you can upload your profile, put your LinkedIn profile, put your bio, put whatever other history you want. You can give it prompts and say, in everything that I do within this environment, answer the question as though you were my persona. And that changes everything. It's like, so I say, okay, I'm an executive at Leger, I'm a public speaker, I do this and I do that. And now it's tailoring as though it's talking to me as if it knows, what my output should be based on my persona. So
Yeah.
I think that's there's lots of advancements. We could talk endlessly, but
Yeah.
no, this has been really exciting, and thank you
Yes.
for having me on the show, Steve.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Steve. And you know what, we should definitely do this in a few months because I would love to see kind of the insights you have that you've gathered over the next few months to just because you're in the front line, just like I am. So
Yeah.
it's been great. So and Chase, thank you for doing the MC for this, and happy journeys, everyone.
All right, we'll do it again. Talk to you guys soon.
Okay,
Thanks,
take it easy,
guys.
guys. Bye.
All right.